So today we are going to talk about short rows in knitting. And a short row is when you are going to work only across part of your knitting and then turn around and leave some stitches unworked. And if you think about what you're doing, if you have a field of stitches this long and you work from this end over to here, and then you turn around and you come back over to here, and then you turn around and you come back over to here, and you turn around and come back. At each of those turns, you're doing what is called a wrap and turn. And those wrap and turns are done in order to hide any holes. But look at the shape that we're creating by doing those wraps. So this is a way of creating either a triangle or a wedge or even a crescent shape in your knitting where you're just filling this area just little bits at a time. And it's a very commonly used technique and more commonly used technique for all kinds of shaping, both in shawls and in apparel. So I'm going to walk you through both the creating the wrap and the turn, and then how to come back and pick up those wraps both in the on the purl side and on the knit side. Okay, so your pattern is going to tell you how far to knit. So now we're going to talk about how to do the wrap and turn in the throwing style of your knitting. So I've gone ahead and worked a chunk of my stitches in purl, and so my yarn is in the front when I finish purling. So to do my first wrap, I'm going to take my yarn to the back of my work. I'm going to, or the opposite side, I'm going to grab that stitch purlwise. I will bring my yarn back, and I will put the stitch back. And there we go. And then I will turn my work. And again, you can see really clearly that my wrap is right there. And if you get nice and close, you can actually see that as I tug on that yarn, it wraps all the way around that little stitch. So then I'm going to go ahead and work a few of my stitches throwing wise. So I'm going to knit 3. And I'm going to wrap and turn again. So when I knit, the yarn is on the back side of my work, so I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. I'm going to slip my next stitch purlwise. I'm going to take the yarn to the back, and then I'm going to transfer that stitch over. I will tell you, if you tension really hard against it, you're actually working against yourself. So loosen a little bit up on your tension so that you can slip your stitch over and turn your work. And now we're on the purl side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to purl to our wrap stitch, and we're going to pick up that wrap. See this gap right in here? That gap is where we're purling to. The wrapped stitch is always to the stitch to the right of that gap. If you are new to this, use a locking marker and put it in here or on the actual wrap itself. So let me just purl to that little stitch. And most of you know this is not my style of knitting, so it always looks awkward and it's a little harder for me, but I do this for you because I love you. Okay, so I'm going to keep my yarn is still in the front. I'm looking at this wrap that's right there. I'm going to grab a little something to show you. This is really what you're looking at. Right here is that full wrap. That's the front leg of it. That's the back leg of it right there. And you can kind of see that wrap that goes all the way around this stitch. Our goal is always to pick that wrap up from the public side so it is not seen on the public side and it gets hidden on the wrong side. So I pick that wrap up purlwise, coming underneath the wrap, placing it on top of the needle, and then I'm going to purl the wrap and the stitch that was wrapped together. Like that. And then I'm going to purl 1, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap my next stitch. When I purl, my yarn is in the front, so I will take it to the opposite side of my work. I will slip that next stitch purlwise. I will bring my yarn back to the front of my work. I'm going to loosen up on my tension a little bit so I can easily slip that stitch back and then turn. And now I'm going to, see my little wrap? I'm going to knit to the stitch that was wrapped before. As I spread my stitches apart, I easily see that big old hunk and gap right there, and I can see a funny little something right there. That is the wrap on my stitch. And I'm going to knit to that little wrap. And we're going to pick it up. Now we're on the knit side. So now I'm going to come into that stitch from underneath, but I'm still on the front side because I'm picking up the front wrap, because that front wrap is the one I want to hide. And I'm going to come into the stitch knitwise, and I'm going to knit those two together as if they were one. I'm then going to knit one stitch and wrap and turn again. Since I'm knitting, the yarn is on the back, I'm going to bring it forward to the opposite side of the work. I'm going to move that stitch over. I'm going to return my yarn to the original side. I'm going to slip that stitch back, and I'm going to turn my work again. And I'm now going to purl back to that gap. Right there, there's my gap, there's my little wrap stitch. And I'm going to pick up that wrap one more time. And if I ever get there, one, and one more stitch, and then we're at our wrap. Okay, our wrap is right there. So we're going to come from the public side of our work, pick that little guy up from underneath, put it up on the needle, and purl those two, the wrap and the stitch together. It is important that you come into that stitch from that direction, right, the underneath. Otherwise, you will end up twisting the stitch, and that will be just as noticeable as if you'd left that wrap in place. Taking my yarn to the back side of the work, moving my stitch over, returning my yarn to the original side, returning the stitch to its original place, turning my work, and let's really quickly knit over so we can look one more time at how to pick up that wrap. And see, remember my gap is right there. I sometimes will just keep my thumb in that gap to fill it and remind me of exactly where that stitch is that I need to get to before I even pick up that wrap. Look at this. This is the wedge that you're creating, right, by doing that short row. I'm going to find my wrap, come into it knitwise, since this is the knit side of my work, come into my stitch knitwise, come around and knit the wrap and the stitch together and take it off. So hopefully that will help you with both wrapping and turning and picking up those wraps. Thanks so much.